Earlier today at LouisianaSports.net, we reported that Lane Kiffin's ex-wife, Laila Kiffin, is visiting Baton Rouge today. There were many reports that she was in Gainesville a day ago. You follow the flight tracker thing. There was a plane. The Advocate reported that LSU sent a plane to pick up. They didn't report Laila Kiffin. We at LouisianaSports.net reported. The Advocate reported it was a Kiffin family member or members, but we have confirmed at LouisianaSports.net that it is Laila Kiffin that's in Baton Rouge today. And the story here continues to evolve. The latest is that Stuart Mandel has reported that Ole Miss has given Lane Kiffin an ultimatum. He's got until the Egg Bowl November 28th to let them know if he's staying at Ole Miss or if he's leaving for Florida or LSU. The timing of that makes sense certainly from Ole Miss's standpoint. And it also makes sense and is really beneficial if you're LSU or Florida in this instance. So follow me here. Just quickly from the Ole Miss side of it, and then I'll get into what people care about more deeply here, of course, which is the LSU side. From Ole Miss's perspective, I understand what everybody has said, that why would you shove Lane Kiffin out the door when you're about to be in the playoff? He gives you a chance to win. You haven't won in 60 years, so on. Well, there's multiple components of this. There's obviously the component that you're not going to let Lane Kiffin coach your team when he's taken a job somewhere else in your league. And I don't know that that's foolish pride. And you and I may say, well, they're Ole Miss. That's what you are. At some point, they have to believe more highly of themselves. And if you look at the last half decade, Ole Miss has won more games than any other team in the SEC not named Alabama and Georgia. So crack whatever jokes you want. We've all done it. Runts, the 03 SEC West champion banner in the stadium, all the stuff. That's embarrassing. And I get it. But at some point, what do you value yourself as? I'll keep giving you the relationship example. If your spouse was dating someone else, would you still be married to that person? No. You have to make a decision and make a commitment. One side is willing to commit, the other isn't. So you have to cut it off at some point. Because what happens then for Ole Miss is if you prolong this with Lane Kiffin through the playoff, then you have Kiffin continuing to coach your team while actively working for someone else, actively recruiting a roster for another team for the next year. And every time that your team is in the playoff, which, by the way, they beat Mississippi State, they're going to be the 5 seed. They're going to be 11-1. They're going to be the 5 seed. They're going to host a first-round game, probably against the G5 representative, which they're going to win. And so then they'd go play in a quarterfinal game, I don't know, at the Sugar Bowl, the Cotton Bowl, whatever it would be, and you'd have Kiffin on the field there as well. And the whole conversation around that game is going to be Kiffin coaching for someone else next year. And so now that becomes an advertisement for the other school. I understand not allowing that completely if you're Ole Miss. So they've given him an ultimatum. The other part of it for Ole Miss is if he is leaving, they need to get in the market for a coach. If Lane Kiffin's going to leave, and let's say they covet John Sumrall, well, all the scuttle is that John Sumrall is Auburn's target. So, John Sumrall is from Texas. He's coached in the state of Alabama. He was the head coach at Troy. And if Auburn covets John Sumrall and Ole Miss wants to get in on that action, well, you got to know. You have to have a decision. Is Lane Kiffin your coach, or are you hiring a new coach? And you don't want to get into that market after the playoff. So I get it. Totally get Ole Miss giving Lane Kiffin this ultimatum. The worst part about this is the football calendar. If the signing period or the portal period all happened after the season, this wouldn't be an issue. Kiffin could coach through the playoff, and then if he wanted to leave after, he could. But that's just not how the calendar works, because whether you want to roll your eyes at it or not, there's still an academic calendar that everyone has to abide by. So the semester is going to start in early January, and you got to have guys enrolled. So if there's and by the way, it's one of the reasons that I liked the spring portal period. Now, coaches didn't want it. They voted to eliminate the spring portal period. Spring portal period would solve some of this anyway. But you got a December signing period. You're going to not have a coach in place for your December signing period? So if, in this instance, LSU is pursuing Lane Kiffin, Ole Miss imposing a deadline there, Ole Miss imposing a deadline on Kiffin actually benefits you if you're LSU, because that means you're going to have an answer from Lane Kiffin by Thanksgiving, if not sooner. I mean, I don't know the timeline that the Kiffins are working on. I don't know if Laila Kiffin leaves Baton Rouge today and they're making a decision tonight or tomorrow. I do not have that answer. What I do know is Ole Miss is going into their open date, and then they play the Egg Bowl. So if you're Ole Miss's athletic director, Keith Carter, and you've given an ultimatum of November the 28th, why wait? If he's going to be gone, why go through your open date and the week leading up to the Egg Bowl? If Lane decides tonight that he's leaving Ole Miss, then announce tonight or tomorrow. I don't know what he's going to do. He could ultimately decide to stay. I don't know that he will. It sure seems like if that was going to be his decision, he could have decided that a long time ago. But the timing of this erases one of the most gigantic question marks, red flags that LSU, and I'm just looking through the LSU lens here, would have had in this whole Lane Kiffin conversation, which is the timing. Because if you wanted to pursue Kiffin, and Kiffin coached Ole Miss through the playoff, and you weren't going to get him and get it done until after the playoff, then that complicates everything for 2026 and beyond. Because you wouldn't have your coach in place for your December signing period or the January portal period. So, and you would have had to have had like a wink, wink, nod, nod, wink, nod, handshake under the table type deal with your coach that wasn't announced. Maybe everybody would have leaked. Maybe everybody would have known. Maybe you could try to tell recruits. But then if you don't have anything signed, would he actually stay true to that? Could you land him after the playoff? Would he stay? What if they made a run and he had a change of heart? I mean, you think a couple of years ago, Kalen DeBoer coached Washington in the national championship game. This was in the 14 playoff. He coached Washington in the national championship game. And then later Nick Saban retired. And then DeBoer left Washington for Alabama. Brian Kelly left Notre Dame when the final playoff announcement had been made. Now, we all knew Notre Dame wasn't getting in, but they were right there on the cusp. There's still a possibility. This is one of those where Ole Miss is in. They're 10-1. Their only loss is a close road loss to Georgia. Even if they lose to State, they're 10-2. They're in the playoff. So this would be an unprecedented thing here for a coach leaving his school that's going to make the playoff. And I think that probably eats at Lane Kiffin. Like if that weren't the reality, like if they already had a second loss, like if they had lost to Florida on Saturday, I think this might already be done. But is that whatever eats at him, what the perception of this move might be for his reputation, which he's worked very hard to rebuild? Is that enough to make him turn on opportunities at elite level programs that will give him more resources than Ole Miss will? But we're going to find out. We're going to find out apparently before November the 28th. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.